Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into Genesis chapter 35. And this isn't just, some dry genealogy or travel log.
Not at all. This chapter is a real pivot point. It's about spiritual reckoning, facing loss, dealing with destiny. It's Jacob and his family at a critical transition.
Especially coming right after the, frankly, traumatic events at Shechem in chapter 34. That whole incident left a dark cloud, didn't it?
Absolutely. Chapter 34 was chaos, human violence, moral compromise. So Genesis 35 is almost like God hitting the reset button. It's an intervention, forcing the family to clean house spiritually and physically.
So our mission today is to unpack that, to look at the history, the culture behind things like burying idols, and maybe even the psychological weight of everything happening here.
Exactly. We need to understand this shift. It's a return to their core identity, their covenant roots.
And there's a lot packed in here. You've got this divine command, a massive family cleanse, some really profound losses, Deborah, Rachel, Isaac eventually, and then the formal listing of the 12 sons, the foundation of Israel.
It really sets the stage for everything that follows, the core idea. It's all about return, purification, and reestablishing that covenant relationship no matter the personal cost involved.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Section 1, the command to purify and the journey back to Bethel. It kicks off immediately with God speaking directly to Jacob.
Yes, Genesis 35, verse 1. God says, "Arise, go up to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar there to worship me, the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother, Esau."
Wow, that's specific. Not just get out of Shechem, but go here. Why Bethel?
Well, Bethel is hugely significant for Jacob. Remember years ago when he was fleeing Esau, Bethel, or Luz, as it was called then, was where he had that incredible dream.
The ladder to heaven dream, right?
That's the one, Genesis 28. It was his first major direct encounter with God, where he felt that divine presence and protection. And crucially, it's where he made a vow to God.
So this isn't just finding a safe haven. It's about fulfilling an old promise. Going back to square one, spiritually speaking.
Precisely. It's a call to his spiritual origins. Shechem represented compromise, danger, the consequences of his son's terrible actions. They were defiled there, vulnerable.
So moving to Bethel is about leaving that worldly mess behind.
Yes, and embracing holiness again. Bethel means house of God. But there's a condition attached. You can't just show up at the house of God carrying all your baggage.
Which leads right into the next big action, the cleansing. Jacob doesn't just pack up, he gives a command.
A very direct command to his entire household. Destroy your idols, wash yourselves, and put on clean clothing.
That sounds like more than just spring cleaning. It's a ritual.
It absolutely is a 3-part purification ritual. Think about the layers. First, inner purity. Get rid of the false gods, the competing loyalties.
Okay.
Second, physical purity. Wash yourselves. This symbolizes removing the defilement, the metaphorical dirt they picked up in Shechem and maybe elsewhere.
And
Outward change. Put on clean clothes. Fresh garments symbolize a fresh start, a clean slate. It's a visible sign that they're rejecting syncretism, that blending of their faith with local Canaanite practices.
let's talk about those idols. Foreign gods, the text calls them. What were these likely to be? You mentioned the teraphim earlier.
Yeah, it's highly probable the teraphim Rachel stole from her father Laban back in Genesis 31 were part of this pile.
And those weren't just little statues, were they? They had some weight.
Oh, definitely. In Mesopotamian culture, where Rachel came from, these household gods often had legal significance. Possessing them could sometimes bolster claims to inheritance or property.
So Rachel stealing them might have been about securing her family's future in her mind.
Quite possibly. It could have been about status or wealth or ensuring her children had a claim. So when Jacob demands they be surrendered and destroyed,
He's making a huge statement.
a massive one. He's saying, our future, our inheritance, our claim to this land comes from God's promise alone, not from these pagan tokens or legal loopholes. This is a total realignment of their trust.
Okay, that makes sense for the idols. But the earrings? Why are they specifically mentioned? Seems a bit random.
It does seem odd to us, maybe. But in the ancient Near East, jewelry, especially earrings, often functioned as more than decoration. They could be amulets, good luck charms.
So linked to superstition or protection spells.
Exactly. Or directly associated with rituals for specific pagan gods. So, including the earrings in the discard pile shows just how thorough this cleansing had to be. Jacob saying, Absolutely nothing connected to other loyalties, no matter how small or personal it seems, gets to come with us to Bethel.
Total commitment, no half measures.
No half measures. It's a complete break.
And then the burial itself. He takes all this stuff, the idols, the earrings, and buries them under an oak tree near Shechem. Why bury them? Why not just smash them or burn them?
Burial is incredibly symbolic here. It's not just disposal, it's interment. He's putting them in the ground, signifying the death of their influence in his household. It's final. Done.
Like closing a chapter, definitively.
Precisely. And burying them near Shechem, the place of their recent downfall, is like planting a flag of rejection right there. This is what we're leaving behind. That oak tree becomes a silent marker of that decision.
Okay, so they've done this radical act of obedience. They've purified themselves. What happens next?
The immediate payoff. Divine protection. As they journey towards Bethel, the text says a terror from God fell on the surrounding towns.
A terror from God. What does that mean practically?
It means the local Canaanite cities, who had every reason to retaliate against Jacob's family for the massacre at Shechem, were suddenly filled with a paralyzing fear. They couldn't pursue them.
So God basically put up an invisible shield.
You could say that. It's supernatural security. Their safety wasn't because they were suddenly strong fighters. It was a direct consequence of their obedience. They followed God's command to purify and return, and God protected their vulnerable journey.
That's a powerful link between obedience and protection.
It underscores the covenant dynamic. Walk in obedience, align with God's purpose, and find security there.
All right, so they make it safely to Bethel. This brings us to the second major part. Covenant renewal and marking legacy right there at the house of God.
Yes, they arrive at Liz,
Yeah.
which Jacob now formally renames Bethel, and the very first thing he does, he builds an altar.
Fulfilling that part of God's command.
Exactly. And he names the place El Bethel, God of Bethel. It's a public declaration. This is the place. This is where God revealed himself to me. This is where my life took a turn.
It's like planting his flag now, but in a positive way, marking his allegiance.
Yes, and acknowledging the faithfulness of God over decades. Remember that vow he made? He's fulfilling it now. It's rededication, gratitude, reaffirming that the covenant holds despite everything.
And he doesn't just build an altar, he sets up a stone pillar, too.
Matzeva, a standing stone. This serves as a memorial, marking the specific spot of divine encounter. And then he performs these consecration rituals.
He pours a drink, offering a libation, and anoints the stone with oil. Let's break those down. The oil makes sense for setting something apart as holy. But the libation, what's that about?
The libation, usually wine or sometimes water or oil, was a common ritual element in the ancient world. It symbolized pouring out something precious, giving back a portion of one's bounty life, sustenance to the deity.
So it's an act of thanksgiving, like saying, everything I have comes from you.
Precisely. Jacob is acknowledging that his large family, his wealth, his survival, it's all a gift from El Bethel. The anointing with oil then formally consecrates the stone itself, marking it as sacred space, a tangible reminder of where God met him.
It's very physical, very tangible worship.
Very much so. Ancient worship often involved these concrete actions and markers.
And then comes perhaps the peak moment of this Bethel experience. God appears to Jacob again.
Yes, another distinct manifestation. And it's here that God publicly and powerfully reaffirms Jacob's identity.
This is the big name change confirmation.
It is. God says, your name is Jacob no longer. From now on, your name shall be Israel. This isn't the first time he's heard this name. Remember the wrestling match in Genesis 32? But this feels different. More formal, maybe.
It seems like it cements it. The struggle at the Jabbok Ford was personal, almost private. This feels like a public covenantal declaration.
I think that's right. It solidifies the transformation. He's no longer primarily Jacob the supplanter, the trickster, the one who grabs. He is now Israel, the one who strives with God, or perhaps God prevails. His identity is now officially publicly tied to his divine encounters.
And right after confirming the name, God reiterates the covenant promises.
Yes, immediately. I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. But then he adds something significant.
What's that?
A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall be born of your stock. He reaffirms the land promise given to Abraham and Isaac, but explicitly adds the promise of kingship and this idea of a company of nations.
So it's not just about being a numerous people on the land anymore. There's a political, even royal dimension being introduced.
Exactly. It expands the scope of the covenant promise. It hints at the future political structure of Israel and its eventual role among other nations. It's a major upgrade to the promise.
So they're at Bethel, this place of immense spiritual significance. Altars built, name confirmed, covenant expanded. It feels like a real high point.
It absolutely is. A moment of profound renewal and promise.
But then the narrative takes a sharp, almost jarring turn towards grief.
It does. And it's a stark reminder that living within God's covenant doesn't mean a life free from pain or loss. The reality of human mortality hits home right there in Bethel.
The first loss is Deborah, Rebecca's nurse.
Yes. She dies and is buried nearby. Now, on the surface, you might think, why mention the death of a nurse?
Right. It seems like a minor detail in the grand scheme of patriarchs and covenants.
But her inclusion is significant. Deborah wasn't just staff. She likely came with Rebecca from Haran decades earlier. She represents a living link to the previous generation, to Jacob's mother.
Ah, so she's a symbol of continuity. And maybe loyalty.
Exactly. A faithful retainer who had likely been a maternal figure to Jacob and his family for years. Her death signifies the passing of an era.
And the place she's buried gets a special name, too.
Yes. Under an oak tree below Bethel. It's named Allen Bakuth.
Which means?
Oak of Weeping. It highlights the genuine grief felt at her loss and reflects the cultural importance of mourning even loyal members of the extended household. She mattered.
It's interesting. You have the burial of the idols under an oak near Shechem, signifying rejection, and now the burial of Deborah under an oak near Bethel, signifying grief and remembrance.
That's a great observation. The two oaks serve as powerful contrasting markers in this chapter. One signifies shedding the profane past, the other honors a connection to the past through grief. Jacob is navigating both spiritual purification and very real human sorrow.
And sadly, the sorrow deepens dramatically as they move on from Bethel.
It becomes overwhelming. As they travel towards Ephrath, which the text notes is Bethlehem, Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife, goes into labor. And it's a desperately hard labor.
This is just heartbreaking. Rachel, who yearned for children for so long,
finally has her second son, but it costs her her life. The midwife even tries to encourage her, saying, "Don't fear, you have another son."
But it's too late.
It is. And with her last breath, as her nephesh, her soul is departing, she names the baby.
Benoni.
Yes, Benoni, son of my sorrow, or son of my pain. It's a name drenched in her final agony, defining the child by the tragedy of his birth and her death.
It's almost unbearable, but Jacob, he steps in immediately.
He does. And this is such a crucial moment psychologically. Faced with this name, born of despair, Jacob refuses to let it stand.
He renames him.
Instantly, he calls him Benjamin.
Which means?
Son of the right hand. It carries connotations of strength, favor, good fortune, proximity to power. It's Jacob actively choosing hope over despair.
Wow, that's an assertion of life of blessing right in the face of death and sorrow.
It's incredibly powerful. He's refusing to let the trauma define the child's identity or his family's future narrative. He's overriding grief with a declaration of strength and promise.
So Rachel dies there on the way to Bethlehem.
Yes, and Jacob buries her right there on the roadside. And again, he sets up a pillar, a stone monument over her grave. The text even notes it was still identifiable to this day, emphasizing its significance as a landmark.
Her death is tragic, but in a way it also resolves something, doesn't it? The lifelong rivalry between her and Leah.
It does mark the end of that intense dynamic. And with Benjamin's birth, the foundation is now complete. All 12 sons, the progenitors of the 12 tribes, are present. The nation is formed, albeit through pain.
But just as you think maybe things can settle, the family dysfunction rears its head again. And it's ugly.
Deeply disturbing. While Israel, notice the text uses his new name here, Israel is camped near a place called the Tower of Eder. Something happens.
Reuben, Jacob's firstborn son?
Yes. Reuben goes and sleeps with Bilhah.
His father's concubine, Bilhah, who is Rachel's servant and the mother of Dan and Naphtali.
Correct. And we have to understand this wasn't just about sex. In the context of the ancient Near East, this was a profound violation with serious political implications.
How so? It wasn't one of Jacob's primary wives.
It didn't need to be. Taking possession of a ruler's concubine, even a secondary wife or servant wife, was widely understood as a bid for power. It was a way of symbolically seizing the father's authority and inheritance rights.
So this was Reuben basically trying to stage a coup, trying to usurp his father.
That's very likely how it would have been interpreted. Think of Absalom doing something similar with David's concubines later on. It's an assertion of dominance, a claim to be the next leader.
Why would Reuben do that? He's the firstborn. He already has the birthright status, theoretically.
Well, maybe he felt insecure. Or maybe it was rooted in the old Leah-Rachel rivalry. Reuben was Leah's son, the less loved wife. Bilhah was connected to Rachel. Perhaps it was a misguided act of revenge or assertion on behalf of his mother's side of the family, a way to strike at Jacob through Rachel's legacy.
That adds another layer of complexity. It's not just ambition, but maybe resentment too.
It's certainly possible. The motivations are likely complex, stemming from years of family tension. But the act itself was a direct challenge to patriarchal authority.
And the text's reaction is chillingly brief, and Israel heard of it, period.
That silence is deafening, isn't it? No immediate outbursts from Jacob. No confrontation recorded here.
Why do you think he stays silent?
It could be shock, utter devastation, or perhaps a calculated political move on Jacob's part. He's just lost Rachel, buried Deborah. The family is fragile. He now has 12 sons. Openly confronting Reuben, the firstborn, could shatter the family, maybe even lead to violence or division right when the foundation of the nation is complete.
So he contains the crisis by essentially tabling it.
Possibly. He hears it, he knows the implications, but maybe decides the cost of immediate confrontation is too high for the newly formed 12-tribe unit. The consequences for Reuben will come, but later, much later in Genesis 49 when Jacob gives his final blessings. The silence here builds the tension for that future reckoning.
It's remarkable how immediately after reporting this transgression, the text just pivots.
Right. It immediately provides the formal list of the 12 sons of Jacob, categorized by their mothers. Leah's sons, Rachel's sons, Bilhah's sons, Zilpah's sons.
It feels like the narrator is deliberately restoring order after that chaotic act. Like saying, okay, that happened, but this is the structure, this is the foundation, this is what endures.
I think that's exactly the function of the list here. It acts almost like a constitutional charter. It reaffirms the 12-tribe structure, solidifies the national foundation, ensuring that despite Reuben's disastrous personal failure, the divine plan for Israel through these 12 sons remains intact. Order is asserted over the chaos.
Okay, so we've had purification, covenant renewal, profound loss, transgression. How does the chapter wrap things up?
It brings the story full circle, back to the previous generation. Jacob Israel finally completes his long journey and returns home to his father, Isaac.
Back to Mamre near Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had lived, the heartland of the patriarchal story.
Exactly. It's a significant homecoming. And it's here that the final transition of leadership occurs. Isaac dies.
At a very old age, 180 years old.
Yes, the text uses that beautiful Hebrew phrase, old and full of days. It suggests a life lived to its completion, a sense of peace and fulfillment. And then it says he was gathered to his people.
That phrase always struck me. It sounds like more than just dying.
It reflects an ancient understanding of the afterlife. It's not just about physical burial. It implies Isaac's spirit joining the realm of his ancestors, specifically Abraham. There's a sense of spiritual continuity joining the preceding patriarchs.
So the lineage continues even beyond death.
In their worldview, yes. And then comes the final poignant scene of this patriarchal era.
The burial of Isaac.
And significantly, who buries him? His sons, Esau and Jacob, buried him.
Wow. After everything, the rivalry, the deception, the decades of separation and tension, they come together.
It's a powerful image of reconciliation. They set aside their lifelong conflict to perform this final act of filial duty together. It provides a sense of closure, not just for Isaac's life, but for the entire Isaac generation narrative.
So Isaac's death and this joint burial really mark the official end of that phase. The torch is now fully passed.
Absolutely. The era defined by Abraham and Isaac is complete. The covenant responsibility now rests squarely and solely on Jacob Israel and his 12 sons. The stage is set for the next chapter of Israel's story.
Okay, that covers the narrative flow. Now let's dive deeper into the analysis, layering in the meaning. Theologically, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, the most striking theological theme is probably God's unwavering faithfulness and grace. Think about it. Chapter 34 is a disaster of human making. The logical divine response could have been judgment.
Right, they messed up badly at Shechem.
Terribly. But God's response isn't wrath, it's initiative. God tells Jacob, go to Bethel. God initiates the renewal. God provides the protection. God reaffirms the covenant despite the family's idolatry, violence, and internal dysfunction, like Reuben's sin.
So it highlights that God works through and even sticks with incredibly flawed people.
Absolutely. It's a core message throughout Genesis, really. His purposes aren't ultimately thwarted by human failure. He calls them back, cleanses them, and keeps his promises moving forward.
And that demand for purification, burying the idols, speaks volumes about the nature of that relationship, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It underscores God's demand for exclusive worship. El Bethel is not just one God among many options they picked up along the way. He requires total allegiance, The cleansing isn't optional, it's the necessary prerequisite for restored fellowship and receiving the renewed blessing. You can't have the covenant promise while clinging to pagan alternatives.
But as we saw with Deborah and Rachel, the covenant doesn't mean immunity from suffering.
Not at all. And that's another key theological point. God's sovereignty is seen not just in blessing, but also in allowing suffering and loss. The deaths of these significant figures demonstrate that being chosen doesn't provide an escape from the harsh realities of human existence: grief, pain, mortality. It grounds the covenant in the real world.
Let's shift to the psychological lens. How does this chapter portray Jacob's internal journey? The return to Bethel seems psychologically important after Shechem.
Immensely important. Shechem represented trauma, fear, and the terrifying possibility of annihilation. Returning to Bethel, the site of Jacob's foundational encounter with God's promise and protection when he was young and vulnerable, offers a chance for psychological recentering.
Like going back to a safe place, a place where he felt secure.
Exactly. It's a quest for an anchor in the storm. He's leading this large, troubled family. By returning to Bethel, he's trying to reconnect with that original sense of divine assurance, seeking stability and purpose for himself and, by extension, for the whole group, replacing fear with renewed faith.
And his handling of Benjamin's naming, that seems like a powerful coping mechanism.
Oh, it's a profound psychological act. Rachel names him son of my sorrow, essentially branding him with grief. Jacob's immediate renaming to son of my right hand is a deliberate act of cognitive reframing.
He's choosing the narrative.
He is. He's asserting agency over victimhood. He's choosing to define this new life by strength, hope, and blessing, rather than letting it be solely defined by the tragedy surrounding its beginning. It's a remarkable example of transforming despair into a statement of future potential.
What about Reuben? Psychologically, what might be driving his transgression? Is it just a power grab?
It's likely more complex than just raw ambition. Remember, Reuben is the son of Leah, the slighted wife. He grew up witnessing his mother's pain and Jacob's obvious favoritism towards Rachel and her children.
So maybe it's displaced anger? Resentment?
Quite possibly. The act could be seen as a deeply dysfunctional, misguided lashing out. An attempt to assert power, yes, but perhaps fueled by a lifetime of feeling secondary. Targeting Bilhah, who is linked to Rachel, might have felt like striking back at the favored side of the family, a twisted way of seeking validation or revenge for his mother's perceived mistreatment.
That adds a tragic layer to his actions. It's still wrong, but maybe understandable in the context of that intense family dynamic.
It highlights the deep wounds and dysfunctions simmering beneath the surface of this chosen family.
Now, thinking socially, how does the chapter reinforce Jacob's authority as patriarch?
In several ways. First, his command for purification is absolute. He tells everyone, wives, sons, servants, the whole household, to give up their personal religious items, and they obey. That demonstrates his unquestioned authority as the spiritual and legal head of the clan.
And the renaming of Benjamin.
That too. His ability to immediately overrule Rachel's chosen name and bestow the name he chooses reaffirms the patriarch's prerogative to define identity and destiny within the family structure. His word is final.
But Reuben's act is a direct challenge to that social order.
A fundamental challenge. The entire social structure of the clan depended on respecting the patriarch's authority and boundaries. Sleeping with his father's concubine was a direct assault on that structure. It violated norms of honor, succession, and family integrity.
And the fact that Israel heard it means the whole clan knew the implications.
Absolutely. Everyone would have understood the gravity of Reuben's transgression. It would have immediately cast doubt on his suitability for leadership and jeopardized his birthright, the double portion of inheritance. Jacob's silence might have prevented immediate conflict, but the social damage was done, and consequences were implicitly understood to be inevitable.
Which makes the immediate listing of the 12 sons even more important, socially reestablishing the official structure.
Precisely. It shores up the foundation, confirming the 12 pillars of the future nation, ensuring the social and tribal order remains clear despite Reuben's attempt to disrupt it.
This chapter is so dense. Let's explore some of the allegorical and typological layers. The journey to Bethel itself feels like a metaphor.
It's a classic allegory for the spiritual life, isn't it? It represents the call to return to our first love, our foundational spiritual experiences. When we've wandered, compromised, gotten entangled in the Shechems of life, there's often that call to arise, go up to Bethel, return to the source, purify, and rededicate ourselves.
And the idols they buried. That resonates even today, doesn't it? Even if we don't have literal teraphim.
Oh, absolutely. The command to discard foreign gods is a timeless challenge. What are the modern idols that demand our allegiance, that take precedence over our deepest commitments? It could be anything: money, career, status, comfort, technology, relationships, even ideology.
Things that we give ultimate value to other than what should have ultimate value.
Exactly. The story challenges you, listening now, to identify those things in your own life. What needs to be symbolically buried under the oak tree? What compromises need to be decisively rejected to achieve spiritual integrity? It's an allegory for intentional surrender and purification.
And Benoni becoming Benjamin, that feels loaded with meaning too.
It really is. Beyond the immediate psychological act, it carries rich metaphorical weight. It speaks to the possibility of transformation, how suffering can yield strength, how sorrow can be redeemed into blessing, how something born in pain, Benoni, can become a source of strength and favor, Benjamin.
Are there specific typological connections that later traditions drew from this chapter?
Yes, several significant ones, particularly in Christian interpretation. The Benon and Benjamin renaming is often seen typologically.
How so?
Rachel's son of my sorrow and Jacob's son of the right hand are seen as prefiguring aspects of Christ. He's the man of sorrows, Isaiah 53, acquainted with grief, who suffers for humanity's sake. Yet, through resurrection, he is exalted to the right hand of God the Father, the position of ultimate authority and favor. It maps that trajectory from suffering to glory.
That's a powerful connection. What about other elements?
The purification itself, getting rid of idols, washing, changing clothes, is seen as a type or foreshadowing of Christian sanctification. The call to put off the old self with its corrupt desires and put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in righteousness and holiness, echoes Jacob's command.
Putting off the old garments, putting on the clean ones.
Exactly. And Bethel itself, the house of God, becomes a type pointing towards the true meeting place between God and humanity, ultimately fulfilled in Christ, who is the bridge, the ladder connecting heaven and earth.
So bringing all this forward, what's the relevance for us today? How does this ancient story speak into modern life?
Well, on a very human level, it models resilience. Jacob faces an incredible concentration of grief and crisis, the death of a trusted figure, the traumatic death of his beloved wife, a shocking betrayal by his eldest son, all in quick succession.
It's almost too much to bear.
Yet his response isn't just collapse, it's action. Purification, worship, renaming, continuing the journey. It shows an amazing capacity to navigate profound loss, to find ways to redefine sorrow into strength, which is something many people grapple with.
It also seems to speak powerfully about leadership, especially within families or communities.
Absolutely. Jacob, for all his past flaws, steps up here. He takes responsibility for the spiritual health of his household, demanding purification. He makes the hard choices, like renaming Benjamin, asserting hope. Even his silence regarding Reuben, while potentially problematic, can be seen as a difficult leadership decision aimed at preserving unity in a fragile moment.
So it highlights the leader's role in guiding people towards core values, towards unity, even when things are incredibly messy and dysfunctional.
Precisely. It shows that leaders have to confront the need for purification, set the direction, and manage crises, often simultaneously. It acknowledges the messiness of real life and real families, but insists on the possibility of renewal through obedience and divine grace.
So Genesis 35 isn't just closing out old storylines, it's actively shaping the future, demanding intentional action cleansing, worship, remembering even in the midst of turmoil and loss. Jacob's journey back to Bethel is like an open invitation for spiritual recalibration.
It truly is. And perhaps a final thought to leave with you, the listener, emerges from those two stone pillars Jacob sets up in this chapter. He anoints one pillar at Bethel, marking a place of powerful divine encounter and renewed promise. He erects another pillar over Rachel's grave, marking a place of profound, heartbreaking loss.
Two markers, one of promise, one of pain.
Exactly. They stand almost side by side in the narrative flow. So the question for you is, what does it mean to recognize and, in a sense, mark the significant places in your own life? Both the Bethels, the moments of encounter and promise, and the Rachel's tombs, the places of deep suffering and loss. How does honestly remembering and honoring both types of experience shape the person you are becoming, the identity and strength you carry forward?
That's a deep challenge. How do we hold both the sorrow and the promise and let both shape us? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the rich and complex narrative of Genesis chapter 35.